So this guy, his name is Amir Sarfati. He is a Jew. He was born in a Jewish family, very, very prominent. You might have seen him on YouTube. He is going to be talking about the biblical prophecy, end of time, and explain about the existence of Israel, why it is important, how it will play a role. So he was asked this question, how Israel, or what Israel will do in terms of all the prophecies about end of time, how important Israel is. So let's take a listen at this video.
And now comes the point of the future of my nation, because Israel is a miracle. No matter how you can look at it, there is no logical explanation to the rebirth of a nation after 2,000 years of being away from its land, the rebirth of a language that was.
This is a miracle. Israel is a miracle, guys. How can it be a miracle when Israel did not even exist? They forced themselves into taking or robbing lands from the Palestinians. How is this a miracle? This is a robbery, man. This is a robbery. But they say, well, this is a miracle because it revived the Judaism, the Jews coming back to its homeland. Wow.
Was not being spoken anywhere. The rebirth of a land that was a barren wasteland. Mark Twain shows up in the middle of the 1800s to Israel, and he writes that even the cactus, which is a great friend of the desert, did not live there. I mean, it was that bad. And so God restored the land, restored the people back to their land, restored their language. This is something that no one has explanation to unless you read Bible prophecy and you know that God promised the nation of Israel that at the very end, He will bring them back to their land. And so the return of the Jews.
No, this is not a promise of God that was being fulfilled. It is a conspiracy against the Palestinians that took place during the end of World War I, when they tried to dismantle the Ottoman Empire. The Khilafah was gone, and so Palestine found itself to be all lonely. And then there was this conspiracy where the Yahudi, the Jew, they bribed, if you like, the Saudi regimes and many other regimes in the Arabian Peninsula to keep their mouth shut. And then they came to Israel, to Palestine, what is Palestine, but now it is Israel, and they kicked all of the Palestinians out. There was a huge massacre.
Back to their land. In the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948,
yeah.
Can a nation be born?
No.
In a moment at once?
It was not born. It was being robbed from these innocent people who did not have the chance to fight. They were not expecting. They were actually welcoming these robbers. And they went in and they robbed. This is what it is.
Yes, a nation was born immediately. And as soon as Zion was ready to give birth, it did. And so Israel was born in 1948, and since then it's in a constant battle to survive. And if you study the words of Israel,
it is not constant battle. It is from Allah that they would always remain in a state of fear. Today, even though they really have no reason to be afraid of anybody, imagine US is backing them up. The whole world is behind them, even the Muslim countries. But they cannot sleep. Naftali Bennett, he said this, we cannot sleep at night in peace. And he said, look at Iran, they are sleeping peacefully. So Allah Azza wa Jalla said in the Quran about Fir'aun that they used to remain in fear. And Allah Azza wa Jalla has put that fear in their heart. Israel, what are you afraid of? But this fear, this constant battle that he is referring to, it is actually nothing but psychological. Allah Azza wa Jal has changed, has put this fear, this twisted mind in their heart, so they do not know what to think of.
And if you go beyond all the heroic stories, you will find out that unless the Lord fought for us, we would have been just long ago completely dead. And so God not only brought the Jews back to their land, but He sustains them in the land up until today. So that is a huge thing, because when Jesus spoke to the disciples about the
Look at this
signs
guy.
of the end, he gave them an interesting parable on the fig tree, and he said, learn the parable from the fig tree. When its leaves comes back to be green and
So this is how they use their robbery to justify their coming back to the land of Israel, and they claim that this is nothing but miracle. What miracle are you talking about? You took this land away from these Palestinian people. So dear message, we have to be careful. Now, talking about the biblical prophecy, I do not know whether he will explain all of this. He said, this guy Amir Sarfati, he mentioned that the Bible, end of time prophecies, are 30% of the entire Bible. This is what he said. I mean, of course, then it will depend what Bible which Bible you're talking about. I actually met a lady the other day. She said, "Oh, your Quran has versions, different versions, just like Bible." I said, "No, it is different." So, what Amir Sarfati will be talking about, we do not know from which Bible he will be quoting. Let's take a listen.
therefore, then you know that the summer is near. The fig tree is a symbol of the national privileges of Israel. You know, you can be olive tree as a Gentile. You can be a fig tree, a vine as a Gentile, because these are the spiritual and religious privileges that now you have also. But as a Gentile, you cannot be the fig tree, because that is the national privilege of Israel. And Israel is being born now. Nationally, it's being born right now. And so the Bible says, when you see, he's telling the church, when you see the fig tree coming back to life, when the church sees that Israel is back to life nationally, you know that summer is near. So this is already a big sign of that we are at the very end time. But you know, when you sail through the book of Revelation, you can clearly see that maybe God restored Israel back physically to their land, but now he has to restore them spiritually also back to himself. That has not happened yet. We are now at the point where the Jewish people are back in their land, but they're not back to their God, and they're not yet acknowledging their Messiah. Not yet.
Okay, so basically he's promoting or propagating the fact that the Jew, they need to hold fast to their book. You know, they need to be united, they need to come to their God, they need to worship more, they need to pray more, they need to become more spiritual. Now, if that is what is required from Israel and its people, then I think we are very far away from that. Think about the prime minister Israel had. None of them are religious. They don't give a, you know, they don't care about religion. In fact, if you take a look at the situation of the Zionist Israel, they are saying not a single word against all of these corruptions that are taking place on land. They do not care about anybody who is being oppressed. They do not care about the whole world. They're completely silent. These are people of God. This is what they're claiming, that we are people of God. Then why do you not raise your voice? So you are far away from being religious, from the spiritual community that God has still to restore. So God is taking his time, but at the same time, if you take a look at what the Israelis are doing right now, you can say that, well, how can God guide these people? How can God have miracle on this kind of people who are oppressing the Palestinians and also many Muslims around the world? There's, you know, indirectly they're supplying weapons, or they're stoking Islamophobia in many places. They are bullying the Palestinians. They're taking more of their lands from them. The question is this really the people, the chosen people that God will restore spirituality to? That's just an insane idea. Wow.
Saying not yet, because Paul said to the church in Rome, in Romans 11, that eventually all Israel will be saved. But he said something has to happen first.
Yeah, but you don't do nothing. The Israelis, the Yahudi, they do nothing. They do not even try. only a fraction of Yahudi today. They are religious, a fraction, and these people are being silenced. Where is your majority of the people? They don't do anything for the good of the humanity. In fact, they are doing exactly the opposite. The majority of the Yahudi today are supporting Zionist Israel. You also have a group of Yahudi Jew who do not support Zionist state. So how can God show His mercy, restore your spirit into the heart of people who, some of them, do not even believe that Israel, this Zionist state, should even exist? Unbelievable. We'll talk about this inshallah in the next videos, to discuss more and go from there.